So I made a sign and hung it up out here on my fence beside my garage. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I just used olive drab green and then some old school stencils with some flat white, and then I did a little bow tie and with masking tape. But this sign kind of looks crooked because the way they made the guys that installed the fence, I think didn't know how to square stuff up. But with a bubble level, this thing's straight, but the rest of the fence not so straight. I thought my wife would disapprove of that fence, the sign on the fence, but she actually thinks it's pretty cool. And I mean, you know, I have 255 Chevys here, so pretty much the whole new name of the compound here is Area 55. So when I ever get to the point to have get t-shirts made for the channel, I'm gonna put probably on the back, it'll say, you know, half rods at Area 55. So that'll be the kind of one of the new names for everything. I thought about changing the channel name, but it's just going to make it too long. I'm just going to leave it half rods. But let's see, I can put in some video clips of some other stuff. Oh, I can show you something here, something to check for, guys. This is something that now I've only seen this twice. This is the second time I've seen this on a 55. So if you got your car, you know, and you're working on it or something you're going to build, go out there and grab your quarter panel here, and you can need to do it on any of the 3 years, but grab your quarter panel here and try pulling out, and watch this area right here when you pull out on it. You know, quarter panel is going to flex a little bit. That's just normal. You know, there's nothing out here. This is just kind of hanging in the wind right here. So the thing that I have noticed twice before is this actually pulled out a little bit from the car. And I'm going to show you what the cause is. Now again, I've only seen this twice. So what had happened to this car is this was loose from the pinch weld on the trunk right here. So when you pulled out on it, this was coming away from the main wheel tub trunk floor area here. So what I did was I put a bolt and a nut in it and cinched it up. And then I put a little stitch weld on there, and I'm just going to leave the nut and bolt in there. I used a lock washer and everything. I'm just going to leave it. Doesn't matter to me. Not putting mirrors under this car, but it's just something to check for. And I ended up having to do both sides. Now, what I think happened, you know, when these cars were out and about on the road, even when they were new and say 20 years after, they didn't have roads back then like we have today. You know, most roads were dirt, gravel, clay, whatever. So, and they were rough. So if you've ever been down an old gravel road or a dirt road at high speed or fairly high speed, sometimes the cars will hit them washboards and they'll just shake to pieces. I know this car come from somebody that lived down a dirt road, because the underneath the car, the inside of the chassis, there had been dirt and clay and rocks, little gravel and stuff all inside of it. So the car's had a dirt road life, and a lot of the suspension stuff was just wore completely out. So it's probably what happens when you're driving down a dirt road all the time, and you know, the constant vibration and shaking that the car does, it's going to shake stuff loose. So just something to check. You know, it's an easy repair to do, but I did have to do both sides. So of course, the other thing you need to check for before you go to do any paint work on the car, check your underneath your fender well lip openings. Like, climb under there and look at the lip underneath, because a lot of times they have little ripples and little wavy high spots in them, and you can hammer and dolly those back out, because, you know, when a quarter panel's flopping back and forth real hard, it can cause some wrinkles in that lip. And also, you know, people trying to put a different tire or something under there, they may not have the car quite jacked up right, so they were kind of rough getting the tire under there and got in the fender well lip and could have bent that as well. So I went in and straightened all the lips on both sides, even the flange in the back. But I'm going to get started, guys. I got a lot to do here. Lots of stuff going on, man. I got to try to get primer on that car, but I'm trying to do as much as I can to the main part of the car, so I don't have to string cables and cords and air hoses and maybe drop a tool on something and have to go back and do putty work or something. So I'm trying to cover it all, get everything mocked up and done first before. That's why I like building my cars in bare metal. I don't have to worry about, you know, dropping something or something falling on it or whatever. You get what I'm saying. All right, so here's a little fabrication project I started on. Now this is a bumper jack I had here. It's from an 80 Buick Regal. I don't have an original, 55 jack, so, this one will still do the job. But, it's not, I'll probably end up sanding it down and painting it and everything, which the paint's just going to chip off on this part of it because it's supposed to be CAD plated, but I don't really care. But the thing about these cars is the way the jack goes in there. I honestly couldn't even tell you how an original jack goes in here and stays secure. I think I've only had one car maybe that had an original jack. But what I ended up doing was I took a pretty heavy L bracket that I had here and I welded a square nut to it here. And then I actually drilled another hole because it only had one hole here and one hole there. It actually had one further, but I had to cut the back off of it to make it fit. Anyway, I used some countersink, some button head Allens, and I have lock washers and nuts on the back side. But I'll end up polishing these up pretty nice. They're actually not too bad right now, but they could use a good polishing. So what I did was I bolted the bracket there, and then I made my own wing nut. Now I just used stuff I had here. I didn't go buy anything. But I'll run this back down to show you here. So I've got this thing where it's not going to move around and vibrate and rattle and bang and clang. So I got this made out of all thread stainless steel 3/8 by 16 all thread, and I had a 3/8 by 16 wing nut here, but it was just CAD plated steel. If I'd have had a stainless one, I'd have used that, and then I could have polished the whole thing. But it's also something I could make later because I've got a lot more of this stainless all thread. But anyway, I welded the wing nut to the stud, so now it's pretty much a wing bolt to bolt the jack to it up there. Now down here I actually welded a square nut into the back of the jack at an angle, and my idea was to make another one of those wing bolts to where it'd bolt in from back here, but it was too difficult to try to get it lined up. So what I ended up doing was taking a piece of the all thread and I stuck it down in that square nut and I welded it up. So now it's a stud that I can put through like that, set that up there, and put the deal in it. So it's pretty easy, 2 wing nuts, and it is out and ready. But I'm trying to knock out as much of this fabrication stuff as I can because I don't want to have my final prime on the back of the car and then be in here trying to do stuff like this, because I may chip or scratch something and I'd have to go back and putty it and repair the area. But so I sanded all the trunk area, and I used POR 15 back here. Now what I'm going to end up doing is I had a couple of dingers in the wheel wells. There's some over there that had quite a few spot weld indents over here for the gas filled tube bracket on the other side of it. So I went ahead and ground that area down to metal real good with 36 grit Norton Blaze disc, and then I slabbed on some filler. But I'm going to go back and block those out. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to Raptor line the trunk like I did on the hardtop and a 57 Chevy Bel Air I used to have. But I'm going to go ahead and Raptor line the whole trunk, and then when I paint the car, I'm going to paint all of the trunk with it. I'm going to scuff down the Raptor liner, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint it body color. It'll give it a unique look. Now, bed liner in the trunk, I talked about this in a video a long time ago, but I'll tell again in case somebody hasn't heard it. I had a 57 Chevy Bel Air, and I drove it to work all the time, and I drove it on the turnpike on the way home almost every day. So the car had some road noise inside of it. I didn't have Dynamat or anything in it. It was a budget build like I usually do. I worked at a place that done spraying bed liners, and we had a cancellation that day, so the boss let me bring the 57 in, and we did the spraying bed liner in the trunk of the car. It was an amazing, noticeable difference when I got on the turnpike of how less road noise there was compared to just bare steel. I was blown away just by doing the trunk area right here, the sides and the floor and up in there and stuff. So it was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. So I kind of want to do that again because I want this car to be a real nice cruiser for my wife. So I'm going to try to do one thing of Raptor liner. I hope that's all I need, but I may need 2. I should have bought a dang case with 4 in it instead of just the single. But anyway, that's the jack. All right, guys, so I'm working on just a little something here. I had an idea in my head. I'm going to try to knock it out real quick. So this is an Undertaillight V8 emblem. This is an older set. They're a reproduction that I got from my cousin. You know, these go underneath the taillight back here, and it basically just shows that the car's a V8. But the tab's broken off of this, and I've decided I'm going to try to make a panel in here and weld a machine screw stem to it, cut the head off a machine screw, and use that. That way this will have the actual, you know, slide on clip, and then this one will take a nut. But what I've decided to do, I've already got it traced out here, but I basically took a piece of cardboard here and I've cut it out, and of course I'll shape it after I get it cut out, but it'll basically go in there like that, and then this side will have a actual threaded stud sticking up. But what I'm going to do is panel bond this new repair piece to the back of this. I'll rough this up a little bit with some 36 grit and you know, put some panel bond in there and just squish that to it, and it should, you know, I'll put a clamp on it and let it sit overnight, but it should technically work, and that way I don't have to spend 60 bucks on new ones. I cannot believe the price of these things for no more than what you get, you know what I mean? But that is the new plan, so I'm going to go ahead and drill my holes out right now. That way I'm not trying to fight holding on to a little tiny piece. This is really thin, just some old scrap sheet metal. This is some really thin stuff, so it shouldn't make that stick out a whole lot further, but I'm trying to make it to where it fits kind of down inside this pocket. It has a raised edge here, so this actually will fit flush with that, so it still should fit the body correctly, hopefully. Alright, so I got out some panel bond I had. This stuff's pretty old. I hope it hardens up. But you know, this is panel adhesive, which is basically what a lot of new cars are attached together with. But I welded in a little stud here. It's an 8/32, I think, or 8/24, I don't remember. I welded that in and then ground it, and then took panel bond, smeared it all on both sides. I did rough up both sides with 36 grit on both pieces, so it would bond pretty well. Basically put it in there and smushed it in there, and then what smushed out I wiped off, but it's quite a bit in there. And then I got this clamp holding it together. Now when this is together here, that piece I made is down inside the emblem. It's not sticking out at the flange, so this is not going to stick off of the body further, because there's something on the back of it, which I think is kind of cool. But of course my stud that I put on is not as long as the one that's on the emblem, but it doesn't need to be that long anyway. I've already mocked it up. It fits pretty good, so plenty of room for a little lock washer and a nut anyway. So I'm going to let that set up a little bit, and that little piece will be done. I think that's pretty nifty. Trying to save a little money.